Two female DEA agents vanished in Washington state while investigating cross-border trafficking. Their last known whereabouts remained a mystery for 8 long years. Then a mining crew, exploring a remote cave system, discovered evidence of the missing agents in a flooded chamber. A find that proved everyone had been completely wrong about their disappearance. The shrill ringtone cut through Marcus Rivera's sleep at 8 a.m., dragging him from the restless dreams that had haunted him for the last 8 years. He fumbled across the nightstand in his Seattle apartment, his hand knocking over a half-empty water glass before finding his phone. The caller ID showed his supervisor from DEA International Operations. Director Patricia Thornton never called this early unless something major had happened. "Rivera," he answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Marcus, I need you to sit down if you're not already." Director Thornton's voice had a gravity that instantly cleared his mind. "We've had a development in Elena's case." His sister's name hit him like a physical blow. 8 years of unanswered questions. 8 years of wondering if she was dead or alive. 8 years of guilt for not being there when she needed him most. Marcus gripped the phone, his knuckles white against the black case. Carl Hendris and his mining crew were conducting routine surveys in an abandoned shaft system near the Canadian border, Thornton continued. They discovered a white Ford F-150 through a natural skylight in the cave ceiling. "Marcus, the VIN matches Elena's missing vehicle." The room seemed to tilt. Marcus forced himself to breathe, processing the words. "The truck, it's definitely theirs?" "Field verification confirms it. The vehicle appears to have fallen or been pushed through the opening, landing in a partially flooded cavern below. I'm sending you the coordinates now. Local forensics is already on scene, but I wanted you to hear it from me first." Marcus was already pulling on his clothes, the phone wedged between his shoulder and ear. "How long has it been down there?" "Any signs of—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "That's one of the concerning aspects," Thornton said carefully. "Despite supposedly being submerged for 8 years, the preliminary report indicates surprisingly minimal rust or water damage. The forensics team leader believes it may have been placed there much more recently than the original disappearance date." The implication sent a chill down Marcus's spine. If the truck had been moved recently, it meant someone had been covering their tracks. Someone who might still be out there. He threw his DEA jacket over his shoulder holster, grabbing his credentials and keys. "Okay. I'm heading there now. Marcus, I know this is personal, but you need to maintain professional distance. We're treating this as a potential crime scene, not just a recovery operation." "Understood." But they both knew he was lying. Nothing about Elena's disappearance could ever be just professional for him. The drive north took him through increasingly dense Washington forest, the urban sprawl of Seattle giving way to towering evergreens and winding mountain roads. Marcus had driven this route countless times in the months after Elena and her partner, Sarah Collins, vanished, following every lead, checking every reported sighting. They had been investigating suspected smuggling routes along the border, focusing on corridors used to move drugs and people between British Columbia and Washington state. Their last check-in had been routine, just another surveillance operation. The GPS led him to a gravel access road that hadn't existed 8 years ago, likely cut by the mining company. Orange cones and DEA vehicles marked the makeshift command center at the cave entrance. The scene buzzed with activity. Forensics teams in white coveralls, local law enforcement maintaining a perimeter, and the grim efficiency of professionals who dealt with death regularly. Marcus parked and approached the lead forensics investigator, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes behind safety glasses. She introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Lindstrom. "Agent Rivera, I was told to expect you," she said, her voice a mix of professionalism and sympathy. "I want to prepare you for what we've found." They walked toward a tent near the cave entrance, passing evidence markers and photography equipment. Inside, 3 body bags lay on examination tables, each tagged with preliminary identification numbers. "We've recovered 3 bodies from the cave so far," Dr. Lindstrom explained. "Using field identification procedures, we've confirmed one victim as Agent Sarah Collins through dental records and her DEA badge, which was still on her person." Marcus felt his throat constrict. Sarah had been Elena's partner for 3 years, a decorated agent with a young daughter at home. "Cause of death." Dr. Lindstrom led him to a laptop showing digital X-rays. "This is where it becomes clearly criminal. Agent Collins shows evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull. Injuries inconsistent with a vehicle accident or fall. The pattern suggests deliberate strikes with a heavy object." This shifts our entire investigation from missing persons to homicide. The other two bodies, both female, are significantly decomposed. We have no matches in missing person databases yet. We're running DNA and checking with Canadian authorities as well. She paused, studying Marcus's face. Agent Rivera, I need to be clear about something. We've thoroughly searched the vehicle and the immediate cave area. Agent Elena Rivera's body is not among those we've recovered. The words hit him with a mixture of relief and renewed dread. If Elena wasn't in the cave with Sarah and the truck, what had happened to her? Had she escaped, only to meet her end elsewhere? Or, and this thought chilled him more than any other, had she been taken alive? Dr. Lindstrom showed him the truck through the cave opening, powerful spotlights illuminating the cavern below. The white F-150 sat partially submerged, its DEA marking still visible despite the murky water. Seeing it brought back memories of Elena proudly showing off her new assigned vehicle, joking about finally getting a truck that could handle the rough terrain of border patrol. The minimal water damage is puzzling, Dr. Lindstrom continued. This cave system floods seasonally. If the truck had been here 8 years, we'd expect significantly more deterioration. Our preliminary assessment suggests it's been here 6 months at most. Marcus scanned the recovery manifest one more time, hoping he'd missed something, but Elena's name was absent. She was a ghost who had left behind only questions and a partner's body as evidence of violence. We're expanding the search grid, Dr. Lindstrom assured him. If there are other remains in connected cave systems, we'll find them. But Marcus knew from 8 years of searching that some people didn't want to be found, and some secrets were worth killing to keep buried. He stared at the cave opening, wondering if Elena had looked up through that same skylight in her final moments, or if her story had continued beyond this dark hole in the earth. Either way, Sarah Collins' murder proved one thing. His sister and her partner hadn't simply gotten lost. They had been targeted, and their killer had gone to great lengths to hide the evidence. The Cascade Ridge Motel sat like a relic from another era, its faded neon sign flickering intermittently in the gray afternoon light. Marcus pulled into the gravel parking lot, his body heavy with exhaustion that went beyond physical fatigue. The emotional toll of seeing Sarah Collins' body and confronting the violent reality of what had happened to his sister's partner pressed down on him. Director Thornton had been firm on the phone. Take the mandatory rest period, Marcus. 4 hours minimum. That's not a request. DEA protocol existed for a reason. Emotionally compromised agents made mistakes, missed crucial details, and got themselves or others killed. He knew she was right, but every moment away from the investigation felt like a betrayal of Elena's memory. The motel room smelled of industrial cleaner and old carpet. Marcus set his service weapon on the nightstand with careful precision, followed by the stack of case files he'd grabbed from his vehicle. 8 years of reports, witness statements, and dead-end leads that he'd read so many times he could recite them from memory. His hands trembled as he unscrewed the cap from a water bottle. The tremor had nothing to do with the cool mountain air or lack of food. It was a pure adrenaline crash mixed with grief. Seeing that truck, knowing Sarah had died violently while Elena remained missing, had shattered the small comfort he'd built around uncertainty. For 8 years, he could tell himself they might have simply disappeared. Now that delusion was impossible. He had just removed his jacket and hung it over a chair when a firm knock interrupted his solitude. 3 measured raps, authoritative, official. Through the peephole, he saw a uniformed officer, tall and broad-shouldered with graying hair visible beneath his campaign hat. Marcus opened the door, his body positioned to block the view of his weapon on the nightstand. "Can I help you, Agent Rivera? I'm Sheriff Wade Thompson, Cascade County." The man extended a large hand, his grip firm but slightly damp. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I have a time-sensitive matter regarding your sister's case." The sheriff's uniform was crisp, his badge polished. Everything about his appearance suggested competence. Yet something in his pale blue eyes seemed off, a nervousness that didn't match his authoritative bearing. "Come in, Sheriff." Marcus stepped aside, noting how Thompson's gaze immediately swept the room, lingering on the case files and weapon. Thompson removed his hat, revealing a receding hairline dark with perspiration despite the cool October weather. "I'll get straight to the point. I have a confidential informant who claims to have information about Agent Rivera. Elena, your sister." Marcus's pulse quickened. "What kind of information?" "That's the complication." Thompson shifted his weight, his hand unconsciously moving toward his service weapon before dropping to his side. "This individual has had some negative experiences with federal agencies. They specifically requested to speak only with Elena's family member, not in any official DEA capacity. They're skittish, ready to run at the first sign of a formal investigation. Where is this informant now? That's what I'm here about. They're willing to meet, but only at a location of their choosing, somewhere private, away from any potential surveillance. Thompson's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it quickly before continuing. I know it's irregular, but given the potential value of the information. Marcus studied the sheriff carefully. What exactly did this informant tell you? Why come forward now after 8 years? The discovery at the cave has people talking, Thompson said, his words coming faster now. Old secrets have a way of surfacing when bodies start appearing. Look, I understand your skepticism, but I was part of the original search effort. I want answers as much as you do. I appreciate that, Sheriff. Tell me, what evidence was recovered today? I was only there briefly. Thompson leaned forward, his interest sharpening. That's what I was hoping you could tell me. My department's been kept out of the loop. Federal jurisdiction and all. Were all 3 bodies identified? Any personal effects recovered? 2 of the victims remain unidentified. Sarah Collins was confirmed through dental records. And the vehicle? Thompson pressed. I heard something about it being surprisingly well preserved. The forensics team must have mentioned their timeline estimates. Warning bells rang in Marcus's mind. The sheriff's questions were too specific, too focused on evidence details rather than the victims. They're still processing the scene. Why do you ask? Just trying to understand the full picture. Thompson wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. And Elena, was her body among those recovered? There it was, a flash of something in Thompson's eyes when Marcus shook his head. Relief? It appeared and vanished so quickly Marcus almost doubted he'd seen it. No, Elena wasn't in the cave. Marcus kept his voice neutral, watching the sheriff's reaction. That's... Thompson paused, visibly collecting himself. Well, that leaves hope she might have survived the initial incident. All the more reason to meet with my informant. Tell me, Sheriff, will the forensics team be expanding their search? Bringing in additional resources like ground-penetrating radar? Thompson's response came too quickly, too detailed. Standard procedure would involve systematic grid expansion, cadaver dogs, GPR units for the surrounding area. The DEA will probably request thermal imaging drones, check nearby water sources, examine game trails for evidence of remains being moved by animals. They'll want to search at least a 5-mile radius from the primary scene. Marcus nodded slowly. Few county sheriffs could outline DEA evidence procedures with such precision. You seem very familiar with federal investigation protocols. I've worked with your agency before, Thompson said, but his eyes darted away. Cross-border jurisdiction issues mostly. We need to coordinate resources. Make sure we're not duplicating efforts. Of course. Marcus stood, a clear signal the conversation was ending. I'll need to clear any meeting with my supervisor first. Time is a factor here, Thompson insisted, rising as well. My informant won't wait long. They're scared, Agent Rivera. Whatever they know, it's had them looking over their shoulder for 8 years. Give me 2 hours. I'll contact you through official channels. Thompson's jaw tightened, but he nodded. 2 hours. After that, I can't guarantee they'll still be willing to talk. He moved toward the door, then paused. Agent Rivera, I know what it's like to lose someone. I had a sister, too. Died in a car accident when she was 23. The not knowing, that would be even worse. The words rang hollow, a performance that didn't quite reach Thompson's eyes. Marcus maintained his expression of gratitude until the door closed, then immediately moved to the window. He watched Thompson sit in his patrol car for several minutes, making what appeared to be a heated phone call before finally driving away. Every instinct Marcus had developed in 15 years with the DEA screamed danger. Thompson's specific questions, his detailed knowledge, the convenient appearance of an informant just hours after the bodies were discovered, it all formed a pattern too suspicious to ignore. But if there was even a chance the sheriff had real information about Elena, Marcus couldn't dismiss it entirely. He picked up his phone to call Director Thornton, then hesitated. Official channels meant official responses, and Thompson would be notified immediately of any federal inquiry. If the sheriff was involved somehow, alerting him would only give him time to cover his tracks. Marcus drew his service weapon, checking the magazine before returning it to its holster. Whatever Thompson's true motives were, one thing was certain. The sheriff knew more about Elena's disappearance than he let on. His barely hidden relief that her body hadn't been found in the cave suggested he was protecting a secret of great importance. The DEA field office was on the 15th floor of a federal building in downtown Seattle. The view of Elliott Bay was lost on Marcus as he badged through security at 2 p.m. His mind was still reeling from Thompson's visit, replaying every subtle expression, every pointed question, every moment of relief. The archive room hummed with the sound of climate control, preserving decades of case files. Marcus first accessed the digital records, his fingers flying across the keyboard to pull up the original missing persons report he'd filed 8 years ago. Reading his own words brought back the raw panic of those first days, the slow shift from concern to desperation. But it was Sheriff Thompson's contributions that now held his attention. The sheriff had filed his first report at 7:23 a.m. the morning after Elena and Sarah disappeared, remarkably detailed for someone who claimed to have been off duty. Marcus reread Thompson's assessment with new suspicion. Based on my extensive knowledge of local terrain, Thompson had written, I recommend focusing search efforts on the following sectors. The search grid that followed, Marcus now realized, intentionally left a corridor of territory unsearched along the Canadian border. Thompson had justified each exclusion with plausible explanations: too steep, seasonally flooded, or fenced private property. Marcus pulled up satellite imagery from 8 years prior. The impassable terrain had clear trails. The flooded sections were bone dry. The secured private property was abandoned with no visible fencing. He dug deeper, finding a supplemental report that sent a chill down his spine. James Carver, a game warden with 30 years of experience, had filed a contradictory assessment just 2 days after Thompson's. Carver noted well-established paths through sectors Thompson had declared impassable and mentioned recent vehicle tracks near the cave system. Yet, Carver's report had been buried, never integrated into the main investigation. His fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing missing persons databases. He focused on Thompson's patrol areas over the last decade. The results made him lean back in his chair, a cold dread creeping over him. 17 missing person cases along Thompson's routes. The state average for similar rural areas was 4 to 5. The victims shared a troubling pattern. Mostly young women, many of them immigrants or traveling alone, whose disappearances wouldn't trigger large-scale searches. Maria Gonzalez, 28, an undocumented immigrant. Ashley Chun, 19, a college student. Natasha Volkov, 24, a Russian tourist. Case after case, each with Thompson's signature assessment. Likely voluntary disappearance, probable border crossing. No evidence of foul play. The sheriff had effectively shut down deeper investigations, and federal agencies rarely questioned local law enforcement. Marcus used his federal credentials to access Thompson's duty logs from October 8 years ago. The official record showed routine patrols. But when Marcus cross-referenced with fuel receipts, a glaring discrepancy emerged. Thompson's log patrols should have consumed about 80 miles worth of fuel, but the receipt showed he'd used enough for 240 miles, triple the distance. The answer came from an unexpected source, raw cell tower data buried in the original files. Marcus ran the data through mapping software. At 11:47 p.m., 2 hours after Elena's last check-in, Thompson's phone pinged a tower near the cave system. He stayed in the area for over an hour, with his phone connecting to towers in a pattern consistent with someone moving around the location. Then at 2:15 a.m., the signals showed him heading north toward the Canadian border. The sheriff had been at the crime scene hours before anyone should have known something was wrong. Marcus began methodically copying files to an encrypted drive. Financial records showed Thompson living far beyond a county sheriff's salary. Property records indicated he owned 3 rental houses and a boat, all purchased with cash. Travel records showed frequent trips to Vancouver and Seattle, always returning through remote border crossings. The picture was of a man corrupted years ago, who'd turned his position into a profitable enterprise. But had he graduated from smuggling to murder? Had Elena and Sarah stumbled onto his operation? His phone buzzed. A text from Thompson's personal number. Informant agreed to meet. 5 p.m. Old Bracken Ridge Mill off Forest Road 47. Come alone or they won't show. The location was perfect for an ambush. But it was also the kind of place where Elena might have been held, where she might have died. Marcus saved the final files and pocketed the encrypted drive. He had 4 pieces of damning evidence. Thompson's presence at the crime scene, his systematic misdirection of the search, the pattern of disappearances, and his inexplicable wealth. It wasn't enough for a conviction, but it was enough to know he was dealing with a killer. The question now was whether he could use this knowledge to find Elena without becoming Thompson's next victim. The paperwork at the DEA motor pool took less than 5 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. He selected a gray Honda Accord with civilian plates, a vehicle that would blend in. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. At 3:25 p.m., Marcus positioned himself across from the Cascade County Sheriff's office. He'd changed into civilian clothes, with the encrypted drive in his inner pocket. Thompson emerged at 3:32 p.m., his body language different now, purposeful, scanning the parking lot for surveillance. Marcus followed, maintaining a 3-car buffer. The sheriff's patrol car turned onto Highway 20, then onto a series of remote logging roads. Marcus' suspicions solidified as Thompson executed a textbook surveillance detection route. Twice, Marcus had to take parallel roads to reacquire him. The dance continued for 20 minutes, Thompson's car kicking up dust that forced Marcus to hang back. The sheriff was heading toward the same wilderness where Elena and Sarah had vanished. Dense stands of trees created a premature twilight. Thompson finally turned onto a rutted access road marked only by a recently cut chain. Marcus couldn't follow without being spotted, so he drove past and found a concealed turnout. He grabbed his binoculars and moved through the forest on foot. The trees opened onto the skeletal remains of the Bracken Ridge lumber mill. The site showed signs of recent activity, fresh tire tracks, new padlocks, and security cameras. Someone had repurposed this remote location. Marcus found an elevated position behind a massive fallen cedar, offering a clear view. Through his binoculars, he watched Thompson park near 2 pickup trucks and a van with British Columbia plates. 3 men emerged from the main building. Recognition hit Marcus like a physical blow. He knew these faces from DEA intelligence briefings: Victor Koff, Chun Wei, and Robert Bobby Tanner, suspected smugglers who always seemed to avoid law enforcement. Thompson greeted them with familiar ease. Koff produced a thick manila envelope, which Thompson accepted. The sheriff's back was to Marcus, but his body language suggested satisfaction with the payment. Marcus captured several photos with his phone's zoom. The digital evidence was grainy but clear enough to identify everyone. The wind shifted, carrying fragments of conversation. Increased federal presence since the cave discovery, Thompson was saying. They'll expand the search grid within days. Then we move everything tonight, Koff replied, his accent thick. The northern warehouse first. Would you rather explain to buyers or to federal agents? Thompson interrupted. I'll handle the cleanup at the northern site, same as I did 8 years ago. The casual reference sent ice through Marcus' veins. He forced himself to keep recording. What about the bodies in the cave? Tanner asked nervously. They won't, Thompson said firmly. Maria and her daughter aren't in any databases that matter, just 2 more illegals who disappeared. Marcus filed the names away, thinking of the 2 unidentified bodies. Thompson pulled out his phone. Yeah, it's me. We have a problem. The Rivera brother is asking questions. He's too interested in the evidence. He might be a problem that needs addressing. He's staying at the Cascade Ridge, room 12. Koff grabbed Thompson's arm. No more federal agents. You killed 2, and look where we are now. I kept us safe for 8 years, Thompson snarled. If Rivera keeps digging, he'll find the northern site. Then we're all finished. The meeting began to break up. Marcus retreated, his mind racing. He had found the conspiracy, a sheriff facilitating drug and human trafficking who had murdered federal agents to protect his operation. But now they knew he was a threat, and they were accelerating their timeline. The northern site, was that where Elena had been held? He reached his vehicle and checked for tracking devices. Finding nothing, he drove carefully back toward town, using a different route. His phone showed no signal. The dashboard clock read 4:47 p.m. The trap Thompson set for 5 p.m. was now obvious. But Marcus had evidence, names, locations. More importantly, he knew about the northern warehouse and the planned evacuation. If trafficking victims were being held there, if evidence about Elena's fate existed at that site, he had only hours to act. Marcus fumbled for his phone, still processing what he had witnessed. Agent David Chun answered on the second ring, his voice sharpening at Marcus' tone. David, I need backup at my location. Full tactical team, highest priority. Marcus, what's your situation? Sheriff Wade Thompson is dirty. I've got photographic evidence of him meeting with known smugglers, taking payoffs. They mentioned Elena, David. They're planning to clear out a warehouse tonight, moving trafficking victims. Jesus Christ, where are you? Marcus rattled off his GPS coordinates. I'm about 40 miles northeast of Cascade Ridge, near the old Bracken Ridge Mill. Thompson's still on site with 3 suspects, Victor Koff, Chun Wei, and Robert Tanner. I know those names. We've been after them for years, Chin said. I can mobilize a team, but Marcus, you're in the middle of nowhere. It'll take at least an hour to reach you. An hour? Marcus' heart sank. In an hour, evidence could be destroyed and any trace of Elena's fate erased. Through his binoculars, Marcus watched Thompson stride urgently toward his patrol vehicle. Gone was the calm from the meeting. Now he moved with barely controlled panic. Thompson yanked open a concealed compartment behind the rear seat of his cruiser. Marcus focused the binoculars, his breath catching as he saw what Thompson was extracting. Stacks of documents, bundles of cash, a tactical shotgun, and an AR-15. He's got an exit strategy prepared, Marcus reported. Documents, cash, heavy weapons. This isn't spontaneous. Which means he always knew this day might come, Chin said grimly. Marcus, fall back. Wait for the team. But even as Chin spoke, Thompson's phone rang. Marcus watched the sheriff's face contort with rage. Thompson gestured wildly, shouting something inaudible before slamming his phone against the patrol car's hood. Whatever news he'd received had shattered his composure. Thompson threw the duffel bag into his vehicle and peeled out, gravel spraying as he accelerated down a Forest Service road. He's running, Marcus said, already moving toward his Honda. He mentioned cleaning up a northern site like he did 8 years ago. He knows where Elena is. This might be my only chance. God damn it, Marcus, don't. Chen's frustration carried clearly. Keep your phone on. I'll track your GPS as long as you have a signal. Marcus started the Honda, pulling onto the service road, keeping Thompson's dust cloud visible. The sheriff was driving recklessly, his car fishtailing dangerously. Marcus realized why the route felt familiar. Thompson was following the old smuggling trails he'd studied in the case files, the same paths Elena and Sarah had been investigating. He's heading toward the sectors he marked as impassable during the original search, Marcus reported to Chin. The areas he steered us away from. Those bastards, Chin muttered. Update me every few minutes. But as they climbed higher, Marcus watched his phone's signal bars drop. He managed one final update before losing connection entirely. David, I'm on Forest Road 347, heading north toward grid reference, rattles off coordinates. If you lose me, start here. Now truly alone, Marcus continued his pursuit. After another 15 minutes, Thompson's brake lights flared ahead. Marcus killed his headlights, coasting to a stop behind a thick stand of pines. He grabbed his tactical flashlight and extra magazines. The forest was alive with small sounds. Marcus moved carefully through the underbrush, using skills honed in DEA training. The trees opened into a small clearing. Thompson's patrol car sat askew, the driver's door open. The sheriff stood about 20 feet away at a patch of ground that looked different from the surrounding forest floor. The earth was slightly depressed, the vegetation sparser. Thompson had a shovel and was digging frantically, a stream of panicked muttering escaping him. Should have moved her years ago. Knew this would happen. Can't let them find this site. Marcus' heart constricted. Her. Thompson was digging up Elena's grave. Drawing his Glock, Marcus stepped into the clearing. Drop the shovel, Thompson. Hands where I can see them. The sheriff spun, his hand moving toward his weapon. Marcus had already anticipated the move, his weapon trained. Don't, Marcus warned. It's over, Wade. Step away from the grave. Thompson's face was streaked with sweat and dirt, his eyes wild. But instead of complying, he laughed, a broken sound with no humor. The grave? You think this is her grave? Jesus, Rivera, you really don't understand what your sister stumbled into. Then explain it to me. Marcus kept his weapon steady. Tell me what happened to Elena. Thompson let the shovel fall but kept his hand near his weapon. She was supposed to be routine surveillance, just another federal agent checking smuggling routes, filing reports no one would read. But Elena, she was too good at her job. Keep talking. Marcus could feel the weight of the moment. She found the transfer point by accident. We were moving a shipment. Drugs and girls, the usual run. Sarah Collins tried to call it in immediately. Koff shot her before she could say a word. She died instantly. Thompson's voice turned cold. And Elena was smarter. She tried to retreat, but we couldn't let her go. Not after what she'd seen. The operation was too valuable. Marcus' grip on his weapon tightened. You tortured her? Thompson's admission came out flat. We kept her in a shipping container we'd converted into cells for the difficult merchandise. The bosses brought in a specialist. But your sister? He shook his head with something almost like admiration. Elena was tougher than anyone expected. A fated meeting. Marcus's voice wavered. She deserves to have her story told. Thompson looked down at the hole he was digging, then back at Marcus. She escaped twice. The first time, she got almost a mile through the forest before the dogs caught her. We had to move the whole operation after that, couldn't risk her trail being found. The sheriff's hand inched toward his gun as he continued. The second time, she actually hid evidence, photos, documents, a bloody piece of her shirt with a note. She buried it all in a cache she marked. That's what I'm digging up. Not her body, but her final screw you to us. Thompson's voice grew strained. If the feds expand their search grid, they'll find it. Now where is she, Thompson? Where's Elena's body? You want to know how she died? Thompson's desperation turned to cruelty. When she finally broke after weeks of interrogation, you know what information she gave us. Badge numbers from 5 years ago, outdated radio frequencies, patrol schedules that had changed 3 times since her capture. She played us, fed us worthless intel to buy time, hoping someone would find her. Marcus heard the distant sound of engines growing closer. Thompson heard them too, his panic returning. We realized she'd never give us anything useful. The specialist wanted to sell her. Said she'd bring good money as a trophy for an agent, but she'd seen too many faces, knew too much. So I handled it myself. Thompson's voice dropped. 1 shot to the back of the head. Same as her partner. She died brave, if that matters. Never begged. Never stopped fighting. Where is her body? Marcus demanded, his vision blurring. Thompson smiled coldly. Where do you think we had a crematorium for problems like her? No body, no evidence, no closure for families who ask too many questions. Your sister is dead, Rivera, has been for 8 years. A desperate trap. The approaching vehicles grew louder. Thompson's hand went for his weapon, using Marcus's grief as a distraction. But the forest around them came alive with movement. 2 men emerged from the trees, armed with rifles. Drop the weapon, Fed, one commanded. Marcus tried to aim his Glock at the new threat, but a rifle caught him in the temple. Stars exploded across his vision as he fell to his knees. His weapon was kicked away as hands roughly searched him, taking his phone, wallet, and backup magazine. Through blurred vision, Marcus saw Thompson standing over him, his own service weapon drawn. You should have left this alone, Rivera. You could have lived with uncertainty. Now you'll die just like your sister did, fighting for nothing, saving no one. The darkness felt merciful compared to the weight of Thompson's revelations. Elena had suffered for 2 months, fought and planned and tried to leave evidence, only to die alone and be cremated, erased from the world except in her killer's memories. As consciousness faded, Marcus heard Thompson organizing the men, preparing to move him. But he also heard the engines again, growing louder and closer than Thompson realized. His own team, led by Agent Chin, was on his trail. The last thing he registered was Thompson's curse of recognition. The sheriff finally understood that Marcus hadn't come alone. Consciousness returned in waves, each one bringing fresh pain from the rifle strike. The world swayed, accompanied by the rumble of an engine and the smell of motor oil. He was in the back of a van, hands zip-tied behind him, pressed against the cold metal floor. Through his clearing vision, Marcus saw 2 other men, the ones who had ambushed him, sitting on the wheel wells with rifles across their laps, discussing logistics in a mix of English and Russian. Despite the throbbing in his skull, Marcus forced himself to focus, to remember. His DEA training kicked in. The van took a sharp left, and through the windshield, Marcus glimpsed a rusted water tower with faded letters, Cascade Lumber Company. Another turn revealed a bridge over a creek. 20 minutes of careful observation gave him a mental map of landmarks, a burned-out gas station, a distinctive rock formation, a cell tower on a distant ridge, breadcrumbs for a rescue team. The warehouse complex materialized from the forest, a blight of corrugated metal and broken concrete. What was once a lumber facility now served a darker purpose. Fresh tire tracks, security cameras on new posts, and blacked-out windows confirmed it. And Marcus noticed air conditioning units, unusual for an abandoned building, but necessary for storing certain drugs and keeping human cargo from suffocating. They dragged him from the van, his legs unsteady from the head injury. The main warehouse door opened to a scene from his worst nightmares. The acrid stench of human waste, unwashed bodies, fear, and something chemical filled the air. Industrial lighting illuminated a space divided by chain-link fencing into makeshift cells. Each cage held multiple victims, mostly young women and teenage girls. They huddled on thin mattresses, many with bruises and torn clothing, the hollow-eyed look of those who'd learned that screaming brought only punishment. Madre Dios, a girl whispered as they dragged Marcus past. Others shrank back, conditioned to fear any new arrival as a potential tormentor. Along the far wall, Marcus counted at least 50 kilos of heroin in boxes marked with pharmaceutical symbols that likely contained fentanyl. A sophisticated drug packaging station occupied one corner. This wasn't just human trafficking. It was a full-scale criminal enterprise where human beings were just another commodity. Thompson was already there, in a heated discussion with a man Marcus recognized as Victor Klov. "This is insane, Thompson." A federal agent, the Russian's accented English carried across the warehouse. "We had no choice," Thompson shot back. "He was at the burial site. He knows about Elena Rivera. Then we kill him now. Dump the body across the border. Let Canadians deal with it." "Wait," a new voice interrupted. Chunwei emerged from an office area, his expression calculating. "First, we find out what he knows, who he told. If a DEA team is coming, we need to know how much time we have." Marcus was shoved into a reinforced storage room, little more than a closet. His phone, weapon, badge, and wallet were stripped away and tossed onto a desk outside. They left his hands zip-tied, confident the door and guard were enough. Through the small window, Marcus watched them argue. Thompson wanted to execute him and flee. Klov worried about their merchandise. Chunwei focused on extracting information, mentioning something about enhanced interrogation that made Marcus's blood run cold. The guard outside looked barely 20, nervous sweat beading on his forehead as he clutched an AK-47. Marcus watched him through the window, noting how he kept checking his phone, how his attention wandered. Time was critical. Chen's team would find the abandoned car, but without GPS coordinates, they'd have to search dozens of locations. The young guard stepped away, called to help load victims into a transport truck. This was Marcus's chance. He found a metal shelving unit with a sharp, chipped edge. He worked his zip ties against it, feeling plastic bite into his wrists, blood making his hands slippery. The pain was excruciating, but necessary. After 5 minutes of sawing, the ties parted. He scanned the room for weapons, finding only cleaning supplies. Through the window, he saw the guard's jacket hanging on a chair, his phone visible in the pocket. Marcus eased the door open. He grabbed the phone, powered it on, and dialed Chen's number from memory. "Chen," the familiar voice answered. "Warehouse trafficking victims." "GPS on this phone," Marcus whispered urgently, hearing footsteps approaching. Multiple hostages, heavy weapons. The guard rounded the corner, his eyes widening. Training took over. Marcus grabbed a metal pipe from the shelving and swung hard, catching the guard in the temple. He crumpled, his weapon clattering. Marcus snatched the AK-47, checked the magazine, and flipped the safety off. Amateur hour. He heard shouting from the main warehouse. Someone calling for the guard. Through the doorway, he saw traffickers rushing victims toward transport vehicles. The math was brutal. One federal agent against at least 6 armed traffickers with dozens of innocent lives on the line. But Marcus also heard something else, engines growing closer. Chen's tactical team, running silent. A trafficker appeared in the doorway. Marcus fired a controlled burst, dropping him before ducking back into cover. The warehouse erupted in chaos. "Federal agent!" Marcus yelled. "Drop your weapons." The response was automatic weapons fire that shredded the door frame. But his announcement had the intended effect, pandemonium. Some traffickers ran for exits, others took defensive positions, and crucially, they stopped loading victims. Marcus moved toward the cages, staying low. A teenage girl pressed against the chain-link fence, tears streaming down her face. "Por favor, ayudinos," she begged. "Stay down," Marcus ordered in Spanish. "Help is coming. Rivera, you just signed their death warrants." Thompson's voice boomed. "We'll kill every witness before your backup arrives." Marcus saw Klov moving toward the cages with his rifle raised. Without hesitation, Marcus broke cover, firing as he moved. His burst caught Klov in the shoulder, spinning him around. Return fire forced Marcus behind a concrete pillar. The warehouse's main door exploded inward. DA, federal agents. The tactical team poured in, moving with practiced precision. The traffickers, caught between Marcus and the team, made desperate choices. Some surrendered, others chose to fight. The air filled with the sounds of gunfire. Marcus stayed low, trying to cover the victims. He saw Chunwei attempting to flank the tactical team and fired, forcing him back. Then a burning pain lanced through his left arm, a through-and-through shot that spun him sideways. Through the chaos, he saw a trafficker raise his weapon toward a young girl. Without thinking, Marcus threw himself forward, shielding her with his body as the weapon fired. He felt the impact in his vest, bruising his ribs but stopping the bullet. Clear. Suspect down. Medic. The tactical team's calls indicated the fight was ending. Marcus stayed positioned over the girl until he heard Chen's voice. Jesus, Marcus, you're hit. The victims? Marcus gasped, rolling aside. Check the victims first. The girl he'd shielded sobbed, clutching his good hand, whispering, Gracias, over and over. Around them, agents cut locks, opened cages, and called for medical support. The warehouse transformed into a rescue operation. Thompson was on the ground in cuffs, blood seeping from a leg wound. Claude was unconscious, being treated by medics. Chunwei hadn't survived. In total, 3 traffickers were dead, 4 in custody. More importantly, Marcus counted 32 victims being led to safety. 32 lives that would continue because Elena's investigation, even in death, had finally borne fruit. As a medic worked on his arm, Marcus watched the victims being wrapped in blankets and given water. This is just one site, Thompson said from where he lay, his voice bitter. You have no idea how deep this goes. How many more? Then you'd better start talking, Chen interrupted, standing over him. Because your only chance at avoiding a death sentence is full cooperation. Marcus closed his eyes. They had saved these victims, but Elena was still gone. Still, he could almost hear his sister's voice, see her fierce determination in the eyes of the rescued girl. She would have been proud of this moment. Thompson's full confession came over the next hours. The trafficking ring had operated for over a decade. Elena Rivera was never supposed to be there, Thompson admitted. She deviated from her patrol route, following a hunch. Found our transfer site by accident. Collins went for her radio. Claude didn't hesitate. But Rivera, she tried to retreat, to de-escalate. Professional to the end. The confession revealed the full scope. 2 other corrupted officials, a network of safe houses, and routes that shifted based on law enforcement patterns. 5 additional burial sites were revealed, each containing victims who had resisted. Families who had waited years for news would finally have answers. As dawn broke, Elena's remains were carefully removed for proper burial. Marcus stood vigil, speaking quietly to his sister, updating her on their parents and on the lives she had saved. You ready? Chen asked gently. Marcus took one last look at the clearing where his sister had been hidden for 8 years, where she had used her final moments of control to hide evidence that would eventually destroy her killers. She fought, Marcus said, Elena's note carefully folded in his pocket. Even at the end, even when she knew she would die, she fought to leave something behind to save others. He finally accepted the paramedics' ministrations, letting them guide him to an ambulance. As they drove toward the hospital, Marcus watched the sun rise over the Washington forest, painting the trees in gold and shadow. Crime scene tape marked places of horror. Ahead, 32 survivors were beginning their journey back to lives interrupted. Elena was gone, but her determination had outlived her body, waiting until her little brother could finish what she had started. Thompson would die in prison. The trafficking network was shattered. Lives were saved. It wasn't justice. Nothing could be after what Elena endured. But it was resolution. It was the truth, finally dragged into the light. It was the best Marcus could do with the time his sister had not been given.